I am the Space Quest historian. A long-ass time ago, I made a video about the many different physical boxes of Space Quest 1, and I sort of promised that I'd eventually take a look at the rest of the series and the beautiful cardboard containers they came in. Well, that time is now. And you'll have to forgive the amateurish setup. This is SQH Amateur Hour. I've got my phone balanced on a very precarious makeshift tripod, so it might get a little wobbly and the angle is a bit off, and there's certainly very shitty lighting going on, but I hope you'll manage. I'll try to cut in some better pictures, better inserts of the actual boxes. But anyway, whereas Space Quest 1 had a myriad of different box versions, the rest of the series are a bit more modest in terms of variety, so I've decided to lump them all into a single video. And as with the previous video, I'll be taking a look at the boxes themselves, as well as the manuals and other contents that came in them, starting with Space Quest 2 Valhalla's Revenge from 1987. Now you'll see this box bears a close resemblance to its predecessors to more common variants, the screenshot and rocket box versions of Space Quest 1. And putting them side by side, they're clearly cut from the same cloth in terms of general layout and style. The front of the box shows the genetically engineered life insurance salesman that are key elements of Valhalla's titular Revenge. And the back of the box promises both comedy, tragedy, suspense, horror, and many other nouns, which I guess you can say is actually pretty accurate. It also has a pretty funny picture of the two guys from Andromeda next to a sports car that is described as an asset from the cut of their outrageously best-selling cult classic Space Quest 1, which is outrageous in and of itself because Sierra designers didn't actually get cuts or royalties from the games they produced, and I don't think I'm ruining anyone's fantasies by revealing that the car shown in the picture wasn't owned by either Scott Murphy or Mark Crow. But the inside of the box is where the real juice is. This is the Apple II GS version. Hang on a moment. But the inside of the box is where the real juice is, though. Let's get that bad boy open. I hope no one realizes that I just swapped out the Apple II GS version for the MS-DOS version, and that's because if you set aside the game discs and the rather box standard manual, which wasn't in the 2GS box I picked up, so I had to swap them out. If you set those aside, you'll come across something that isn't in here. Oop, it just magically appeared. We find a very interesting publication by the name of Space Piston. Now this is actually a comic book retelling of the events in Space Quest 1, which predates the 3-issue comic books that would eventually be released by Malibu Graphics, and I'll get to those in a future video. Now in the Space Piston comic book, Roger recounts the events of the first game in sort of embellished moments. He does embellish on a few elements, such as slapping the shit out of a Sarian guard with his mop and taking out the ORAD with a laser blast and zooming off triumphantly in a jetpack. And it also briefly and hilariously illustrates how the success of his first adventure sort of went to Roger's head a bit, as shown here in his appearance on the David Letterdroid show. And towards the end, we get to see Valhalla aboard his asteroid fortress plotting and scheming and handing out some epic bitch slaps to his minions, who are shown to be some sort of sentient ape-like creature, which is something he really had to squint very hard to make out in the game itself. And it's a short, but it's a really great read, and the artist John Shaw left in a lot of really cool Easter eggs in a lot of the panels, such as Roger sporting a Sierra logo on his uniform, and Fred Flintstone peeking out from behind a rock, and Valhalla wearing a Nikon camera and a VCR on his back, and not to mention Pampers diapers. But aside from this jaunty illustrated caper, there's not really any much more of interest in the Space Quest 2 box. So let's move on to Space Quest 3. And here it is. Now, there are actually two variants of the Space Quest 3 box, but I can only show you one of them in the flesh, so to speak. The first edition had gold trim around the edges, but that version is so rare that Sierra Chest, the website that catalogs every release of every Sierra game in the known universe, doesn't even have a picture of it. And everybody I asked online seemed to be shocked that this thing even existed, so I know it exists because Scott Murphy once showed me his copy, but I can't even find a photo of it now, so you'll just have to trust me. There is an edition that has gold trim around the edges. But anyway, let's take a look at this release I do have without the gold trim, but with everything else still intact. The front of the box has this really cool illustration of Roger being chased by the Skull Fighters while scarfing down a monolith burger meal, and on the back you have this wanted poster of the two guys, since, you know, the main objective of the game is to rescue the series creators from the evil pirates of Scumsoft. And inside, you'll find... These aren't coffee stains, by the way. They're supposed to be the Sierra Mountains or like a forest or something like that. And inside, you'll find the game manual, which doesn't have a full-fledged comic book like Space Quest 2 did, but it still has some very cool illustrations. And, you know, check this guy out. And it also has this cardboard Andromedan nose and glasses that you're supposed to cut out and fold. I actually have two of these because, you know, this one kind of went a bit to shit. And these are the glasses, and this is the Andromedan nose you're supposed to put under it. And I think in one of the other boxes I actually have one that's intact that you can, you know, like cut out if you were so inclined. And of course, you've got the adventure window. This comes with the hint book, so let's just pretend that's not in there. And then we got the actual game discs here. They're the 5.25 floppy disks. So the game came on 6 of these bad boys. And down here you have an advertisement for the MT32, because Sierra really wanted to push the MT32 as the standard sound card. You got the Roland MT32 sound module. They also advertised the Adlib music synthesizer card, which was a lot more affordable. But they really wanted you to use the MT32 because, as you probably already know, you've got Bob Siebenberg, composer and member of the music group Supertramp. If this thing would fucking focus. Focus! There we go. There's Bob Siebenberg composing the soundtrack to Space Quest 3, and over here we have William Goldstein, who's composing the soundtrack for King's Quest 4. And it also says you can send in for a free music demo cassette, which is a real thing, and some people actually have it. I don't, but it is readily available online if you just want to listen to it. But that would be an interesting physical item to have. Sadly, I do not have one. And we also have the fall 1998 catalog of stuff coming out from Sierra. Obviously, we've got the King's Quest series right off the bat. This is just like an inventory. But then, yeah, the first one is just King's Quest 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is the new one. And on the next page, we've got the Space Quest series. So we got the 2 most popular series in a row. Well, let's see what else they got on offer. Oh, here we go. Police Quest 1 and 2. Leisure Suit Larry 1 and 2. And some other bullshit. The Sierra BBS, the Sierra Newsletter, technical support and all that jazz. And then we go into the quote-unquote minor games. We got Manhunter and we got Gold Rush. Mixed up Mother Goose and the Black Cauldron, which was, interestingly, the game that the two guys met each other off. And then we've got the Japanese imports, Thexter and Silpheed. I think it's pronounced Silpheed. A lot of people misspell it as Silpheed, but yeah. And then, of course, we got stuff like 3D Helicopter Simulator, which I didn't even know existed, and modem support for that stuff, and some home business stuff like Home Word Plus, like a early word processor, and Smart Money, the complete financial manager, because Ken Williams had this idea that Sierra wasn't just going to be games, it was going to be like everything you could ever do on a computer ever. So that's kind of interesting. I've never actually played around with those things. Got some, here's stuff that might happen if you completely fuck it up. And a single page, a letter from the president of Sierra Online, Mr. Ken Williams, who tells you in no in no uncertain terms to go out and buy a music card. Just in case you didn't read the advertisement booklet over here, he actually personally, explicitly tells you that sound cards are a really good idea. And of course, we've got an ad for the hint book. And again, I just want to stress that the games were not made intentionally hard just to sell hint books, but that doesn't mean you can't include a little promo advertising for the hint book in the box. And down here, we've got the Adlib music sound synthesizer card I can read, which again, you know, was $20 back in 1989, so a bit more affordable than whatever the MT32 went for. I think you had to like sell your firstborn in order to get one of those big VCR looking boxes, but they did produce some frankly amazing sound for 1989. Anyway, here's one last tidbit while I put all this shit together. So in early promotional material, the Space Quest 3 showed a screenshot from the garbage freighter section, and it had this little green blob-like creature, and this was actually something that was cut from the game. This was supposed to be like the alien equivalent of a junkyard dog that was stalking Roger around the ground floor of the freighter, but that actually never made it into the game, and thank fuck for that, because that would have been just like, okay, welcome to the new Space Quest game. Here's another roaming monster that'll kill you outright if you run into it. So I'm pretty pleased with that. And of course, simply have to show, here's my copy of Space Quest 3 with Scott Murphy's signature on it. I believe this one has the Andromeda nose still intact in it. No, it does not. Well, maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I never had that in the first place. Anyway, I do have a Andromeda nose. That's always something. And we got the 10th anniversary, which again was product of its time. Oh, look at that. The most controversial product in the history of Sierra. The hint books. I think we can all agree that this is a slightly more colorful catalog than the one in the previous box, but yeah, that is what it is. And other than that, the manual, for some reason I have two of them. The manual and the discs are the same, and it even has the same promo material inside of it, except for this 10th anniversary thing. And I'm just going to put this together because I somehow forgot to mention that we've also got Mark Crow's signature on the front. So yeah, that's me just showing off like the little bitch that I am. All right, so let's move on to Space Quest 4. Now, we got the CD-ROM version here. I've got the Amiga version for just sort of reasons, just to warn people off against actually getting this version, because it is frankly quite terrible, but I'll put this one to the side for now. This one is the VGA version, the most standard version you can find. Obviously, the 256 color VGA version. This is the floppy version. And over here, we've got the slightly more rare 16 color EGA version of Space Quest 4, which obviously you have to have. But as you can tell, the 4 different versions I have, they look pretty much the same. The outside of the box is the same. So if you were buying this in the shop, just put these a bit side to side. I mean, here we've got the VGA version. Here we've got the 16-color EGA version. If you're buying this in the shop, you really have to pay close attention to make sure you're getting the right one. And the only way you can tell really is by looking at the side or the front of the box. This one has big letters that say VGA on the side and EGA and Tandy sold separately. And this one has the sticker on the front. And by the way, these box versions are a bit different. I think this one is a re-release because they have these stickers on the side, and the first releases had the stickers on the front. But anyway, this one says supports Tandy, EGA, MCGA, and VGA in 16 colors. You really have to pay close attention to what box you're getting. Anyway, let's start with the most common one. This is the VGA floppy disk version. Now, the outside of the box has this slightly bewildering illustration of Roger's suction cupping sludge Vohal, which doesn't really tell you anything about the game, because not only does this never actually happen in the game, this is also a game about time travel. So, and that's, it's not made entirely clear here. There was an alternate box cover shown here in a Christmas ad, which depicts Roger falling out of a time warp, but we don't know who drew this, or if there even was a full-size version of this ever made. This ad was obviously made while the game was still in development, so we can't say for sure, but I honestly kind of prefer this cover over the one we got. Anyway, on the back of the box, we get a little more of an idea of what you're actually in store for if you buy the game. You got a few screenshots and a blurb that talks about time travel, so they do actually get to mention the time travel bit. And you'll notice some of the screenshots say EGA Tandy under them, and yeah, these show how the game looks in 16 colors, and VGA, MCGA, Macintosh show how the game looks in 256 colors. And I was going to say, there are no screenshots of the Amiga version, because that somehow ends up looking even worse than the 16-color version, but we'll get to that. And let's just take a look inside the box, because again, this is where the real juice is. Problem with this box is that I had to glue it together because it came apart here at the seams, and I think I glued it on a bit too tight, so you really have to tug at this thing. Oh, it loves it so. Anyway, let's crack this thing open. Now, oh, I've got the hint book in here. Excellent. Let's just pretend you didn't see that. So, in addition to the game discs, 256 colors, this comes with 6 discs. You've got discs 1 through 5, and then you've got the startup disc, which is the one you insert to begin with. This just has the install program on it. Now, apart from this box standard manual, which, you know, at this point, Sierra was just like, you know what, fuck manuals. Let's not write a separate manual for each game. Let's just have a standardized manual and, you know, put all the information in that, and we'll just package that in with the rest of the games. Interestingly, they do use the, let's see if I can find it. The icon bar they demonstrate is for Space Quest 4. So, and they reused this manual for pretty much every VGA game they made ever since. So it's kind of cool to see that you've got the Space Quest 4 icons in pretty much every manual from here on in. But underneath the manual, and another ad for hint books, you've got the Space Piston magazine. Now, this isn't a comic book like the Space Piston in Space Quest 2, but it is instead this sort of print magazine for time pot enthusiasts, which is really cool. This thing is super hilarious. It has this letters to the editor section, which is really, really hilarious to read. And then you've got a centerfold with a scantily clad alien woman lounging on a time pot, which the letters to the editor column reveals is actually the magazine editor herself. And you've got a review of a time pot, which talks about the exterior of the pod exclusively because the reviewer was too stupid to actually get inside and switch it on, which is a hint that you're supposed to use the copy protection. And then you've got an interview with Roger Wilco, who in typical fashion has him over-embellishing his past exploits and just coming off like a complete moron. Some of the text in the Roger Wilco interview here was even lifted more or less wholesale for the intro in the CD-ROM version, where Roger is boring the aliens in the bar on Magnetheus with his greatly exaggerated tales of adventure.
See, there was this deadly root monster, a ferocious swamp creature, and a Labion terror beast to contend with. Then I had to outsmart another of Vohal's gorillas and steal the shuttle so I could penetrate the asteroid fortress and pull the plug on that corpulent creep once and for all.
Now, let's just stick this guy back in his box because, no one saw the hint book. So, I mentioned that on the back of the... And there it goes. There goes the slipcase cover. Anyway, back of the box here. I'll just pick up this incredibly faded CD-ROM version. Do you know what? Let's go with the 16 color version. Ah, nice and crisp. Now, I mentioned the 16 color screenshots here on the back of the box a moment ago, so let's quickly have a look at this other version here. Oh man, this really doesn't want to come out either, does it? Wow. Someone included their save game disc. That's so cool. I forgot about that. Anyway, here we go. And we got the game here on an incredible amount of 5¼ discs. We've gone all the way up to 9 discs. Yeah, put that in your floppy drive and smoke it. But other than that, the insides of the game box is pretty much the same. Although this one has a slightly older boilerplate sort of manual. They still use the Space Quest 4 icons as examples. And here's an interesting little tidbit. Important. Please read. This game is available in both 256 color and 16 color versions. If you have the incorrect version for your computer system, you can use this form to upgrade to 256 color or downgrade to 16 color. So if you accidentally picked up the wrong version of the game and you thought, oh god, this looks awful, you could send this in and have it replaced with the 256 color version. And they went all out with this. If your system has 256 color graphics, but your microprocessor runs at a speed slower than 10 megahertz, the 16 color version may run better on your computer than the 256 color version. 16 color exchange. If the 256 color version works too slowly on your machine or does not work at all, you may need the 16 color version of the game. That's kind of nice of them, but it's just I love the idea that they take a 256 color and just downgrade it because they've got, oh yeah, you guys have shit computers. We forgot about that. Oh, if you want to play this game, you have to install it to your hard drive. It cannot be played from the floppy disks. And under here, urgent! Oh, this must be important. It's the registration card. Well, you can get fucked. All right, let's put you guys back in the box and let's have a look at the CD-ROM version. This is the CD-ROM version. You can tell by the multimedia PC CD-ROM game logo on the front. Multimedia versions is what we used to call CD-ROM versions back in the day. Let's crack this bad boy open. I think most people are familiar with this version for better or worse because this is the one that came bundled with all future versions of the Space Quest collections. Again, the box is identical, but it's a little easier to spot the difference because of that big sticker on the front. And the inside of the box is also a little different than the floppy disk version because obviously you've got the CD-ROM here. I've got three different. Holy crap. I got 3 different versions. I got a duplicate of this version for some reason. 3 different versions of the disc. This one is black and white, this one is in color, and this one has a frankly arresting design on the front. And interestingly, Sierra apparently didn't feel the need to include a physical manual in the game box, nor the Space Piston manual, which is kind of a real shame. But they did include a sort of little booklet manual inside the CD jewel case, which is not really very interesting. But really interestingly, it does include a sort of summary of the Space Quest games that you don't find in any of the other versions of Space Quest 4. This one tells you what happens in the Sarin Encounter and Volhal's Revenge and the Pirates of Pestilence, just so you can sort of catch up very, very briefly. A very brief recap of the previous 3 games. Now, I said that I had 3 different versions of the disc. I think these are regional differences. One of them is a re-release, I believe, and this one was the... I've been called out previously for getting this wrong. Hey, this is the US version, this is the European version. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say I have 3 different discs of Space Quest 4 on CD-ROM. But that's not entirely true, because I also have the lovely Sierra Originals re-release, which is something that Sierra did later in life when they wanted to repackage their old CD-ROM games for, people. And this one has a slightly more boring cover. And let's have a look at the booklet here, see if it's the same that came with the original. And no, it is not. This is a completely box standard manual with no interest. But as you can see, they're still using the Space Quest 4 icons to demonstrate how icons and cursors work. It's very cool. This is, Sierra re-release, just a real budget, no-nonsense re-release. But here you've got a re-release that will absolutely blow your mind. This is a piece of art. This is what they really should have released in the first place, if you ask me. And it is this frankly artistically superior Space Quest 4 CD-ROM for Windows release. I mean, just look at it. This thing should win awards. God, the typeface, just the general layout of this thing. This thing really tells you everything you need to know about the game. So frankly, I'm disappointed with every other release of this game. This is just the pinnacle. Art design is my passion. This was the inspiration for that. Anyway, let's move on to Space Quest 5. My table is getting really messy here at this point. All right, Space Quest 5 time. Now, of course, I'm just gonna get the senseless bragging out of the way. We've got Mark Crow's signature down here, and also, very hard to tell, but up here, we've got art director Sean Sharp. This is the original release of Space Quest 5, which, as you know, only came out on floppy disks. There was no CD-ROM version of this one, for reasons that I won't go into now. The cover here has this very slimy picture of Roger knee-deep in sludge around 2 of his supporting companions. You've got Drool over here, and you've got WD-40 over here. I guess Flo and Cliffy weren't important enough to include, nor Beatrice, Roger's future wife, who plays a rather significant role in the game. But it's a very nice, somewhat gloopy front box art. On the back here, you'll see Mark Crow flying solo. This game was the first in the series to be released after the two guys went their separate ways, and Mark Crow moved to Dynamics in Oregon. So Scott Murphy wasn't involved in the production of this game at all, as you probably already knew. He's lean, he's mean, he's out to clean. You got your standard screenshots, and you got all the boilerplate stuff that you're supposed to put on the back of the box. So let's have a crack inside of it. So you've got the discs, 5 discs, and again, down here somewhere you've got the box standard manual. I'm not even going to show that, but here you go. Here's the Galactic Inquirer, which is supposed to resemble one of those tabloid magazines from the 90s. You know, much like the Space Piston magazines from Space Quest 4 and that satirized these gearhead magazines, these car magazines. This one spoofs those outlandish tabloids for like Weekly World News that would frequently have bullshit headlines on their covers like Bat Child Found in Cave, and perhaps to a lesser extent the National Enquirer, which was the sort of kick your door down, take pictures while you're taking a shit kind of celebrity gossip dirt rag, but they had a pun for that. Yeah. The title for this is a pun. Yay. But anyway, this thing is super hilarious. It has this article about a mom whose baby's head looks like Ken Williams. And it has somewhere in here, it has an expose. Well, first of all, it has behind the scenes of how Space Quest 5 was made. Obviously, these are not real behind the scenes photos. They've got someone scanning Roger's head by simply putting his face on a scanner. And they've got someone lighting Roger Wilco on fire. But they also have slightly less factual stuff like this expose of Mark Crow actually not being an Andromedan. Oh, I'm not an alien, I'm a human being. And very importantly, it also has the copy protection nav codes under the guise of horoscopes by Gerd Draxon. His psychic predictions for 3010. Now, he was the main antagonist in one of Dynamics' earliest games, Stellar 7, which is probably why he has hilarious predictions as infamous gossip columnist Johnny Magpie will be mistaken for a space mutant and shot 250 times in the head by the sequel police, or why his horoscope for Libra suggests that poison gas may be the solution to a nagging problem. And it also tells you how to work the extra talk icon because the manual itself is quite shit. And other stuff we've got in here is a hot new multimedia advertisement for stuff that Sierra really... But it was kind of a kick in the teeth considering that Space Quest 5 never came out on CD, but they really want you to pick up some other CD games. And this was the time when Sierra just filled the box up with all kinds of leaflets and nonsense. It's not a magazine, it's not a book, it's a software subscription, so they probably just packaged like demos of stuff. This was very short-lived, I'm sure. More advertisement, this one for Prodigy, which was not the band, it was an online service that sort of predates the internet. Where you could download patches and game demos and stuff like that. And yeah, here we've got the box standard game manual. Let's see if they still use the Space Quest 4 icons to demonstrate how to work this thing. And no, they use the Leisure Suit Larry icons instead, which seems even more inappropriate in a certain way. But anyway, oh, look at the quality of those screenshots. Oh man, see that is professionalism. Here we've got free and clear. Get 2 Sierra games. Get 2 Sierra games free when you sign up with Sprint. Now, interestingly, Space Quest 5 has product placement in it from Sprint, a telecommunications company. And yeah, think of that what you will, but of course they had to include advertisement for Sprint in the game itself. One more game manual just for good measure. More catalogs, more bullshit. More how to win. Oh, this advertises the companion books. The Space Quest Companion, Police Quest Companion, and King's Quest Companions. 2 of which are completely batshit insane. That would be Space Quest and King's Quest. And the Police Quest Companion, which I'm told is actually pretty good. It's like a novelization of Police Quests 1, 2, and 3. You know, the actual Police Quest games, not the 4th one. Anyway, let's get all this stuff back in the box. I actually have 2 editions of the Space Quest 5 box. Let me see if I can actually find it in this god-awful mess I'm creating here. Alright, so here is slipcase. I can't be bothered to put it on. Slipcase cover of Space Quest V, which was the retail version you got in stores. And here's a slightly taller little bad boy here, which is actually a Slash re-release. Now, I mentioned this in my Space Quest 1 boxes video, but Slash was a company that re-released games from various other companies, including Sierra, and they really lived up to their name because, you know, the box is pretty nice, but the inside is where a lot of corners really got cut. So there's something else in here. Could you? No, that's just the cardboard insert. Yeah, all right. I thought there was more stuff in here, but that's just a bent up cardboard insert. So, quick reference guide. The copy protection just printed out on like standard paper, and that's really about it. Then you don't even get a game manual. All you get is this little pamphlet that tells you how to install the game, and then you got technical support and warranty. And you got these really gaudy, look, ma, I can use print shop kind of labels for the diskettes. So yeah, that's a Slash re-release. Fun times indeed. Where the hell do I put all this stuff? All right, I'm gonna put this back in the tall box, just so I can keep stuff fairly separate. All right, let's move on to Space Quest 6. Now, once again, I have two variants here. We've got a chunky boy and a not so chunky boy. It's a bit of a tall boy, actually. Let's see if I can put them side by side here. Yeah, that about does it. Sorry for the camera jiggling. The tall boy is not a Slash re-release this time. In fact, the only difference between these two variants is that the tall one, and I'm pretty sure of it this time, was the North American release, and the chunky boy here was the European release. On the back of the box here, we've got some nice screenshots here. They very infamously claim that Scott Murphy flies solo, which implies that he was the sole designer of the game, but it's fairly common knowledge these days that it was co-designed by Josh Mandel, which the parody documentary on the CD-ROM collections even outright state.
Congratulations, Josh. You're the designer for Space Quest 6.
Oh, gee, thanks.
But Josh left Sierra before the game was completed, and the marketing geniuses decided to build the game as a Scott Murphy solo project, something that he was unaware of until the game was already in stores. But let's have a look at the front cover. See, I did the back cover first, and there's a reason for that. Because the front cover, I mean, it's nice and everything, but again, it doesn't really tell you much about what's in the game. Because, you know, the whole selling point of the game was that you get to traipse around the innards of someone. You get to bob around internal organs instead of planets. And there was actually a separate cover made up, which this seems to be an ongoing trend really from Space Quest 4. But this one we got here, I guess, is fine too. His hand is a little... I think there's a perspective problem there. But anyway, let's get inside this bad boy. I'm gonna pop open the... Why do these slip covers never want to come off? I'm gonna pop over the European version, and we can have a look inside the American version after this. I don't think there's gonna be much of a difference here because, yep, once again, we have another humorous fake magazine. This one is Popular Janitronics. Not Sanitation Hotspot, that's actually just the front head article. It's Popular Janitronics, the magazine of space-based sanitation engineers. This is like a spoof of the electronic hobbyist magazine Popular Electronics, and just like the Space Piston magazine in Space Quest 4, this one also has, you know, ads for fake companies, and also has some, oh, how likely are you to get fired? This is a good little score yourself kind of thing. And I like this one, the the Maxi Squeege advertisement. It has wings. No points for guessing what this is parodying. And this classifieds is actually really funny if you read through it, although there's an awful lot of, you know, wall of text here. But most infamously, it also has the hints for the data quarter puzzle, which was, you know, people assumed this was copy protection, because CD-ROM games at the time didn't really have copy protection, and they were like, why the hell does this have a copy protection in the manual? Because, you know, CD burners were fairly expensive at the time, so usually games did not include copy protection. In fact, they took out the copy protection in the CD-ROM version of Space Quest 4. Seen here is the 16-color version because I can't find the CD version anymore. Oh, wait, no, I have it right here. Anyway, so yeah, they had the homing beacon puzzle in here, and they also have a periodic table of elements, which is used for a different puzzle. I like how they just called the solution to last month's puzzle as if the solution was to basically just copy down the periodic table of elements. But yeah, again, the reason for the data quarter and this intermix puzzle in the shuttle that uses the periodic table, the reason for them being in the manual is, of course, that it was supposed to be in the game, like having in-game hints for these puzzles, but you know, Space Quest 6 had a bit of a troubled development, as we probably know by now, so yeah, they sort of forgot to put it in the game and had to put it in the manual last minute instead. Let's have a look at some other shit that's in here. Obviously, we've got the game itself on a fancy little disc here, and we can have a look at... Let's just crack open the big tall boy instead, so we can have a look at the one difference between the games, and that's how the disc actually looks. All right, here we have the other disc. It's a little fancier, I think you'll agree, but that's really the only difference. And also the intersleeve view, which doubles as the manual. So at this point, they just sort of gave up on manuals entirely. This one's got a nice little starry background on it. This one does not. But anyway, the inside of it is the same. And they stopped using Space Quest 4 and Leisure Suit Larry icons to demonstrate how icons work. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. The only other thing is another catalog, 1994 to 1995. Let's see what they got in here. Lost in Town, also known as Urban Runner. Shit FMV game. King's Quest 7, also a shit game. Gabriel Knight, for once, not a shit game, but put right next to probably the shittiest game ever made, ever. And here we've got some slightly older games, Leisure Suit Larry 6, King's Quest 6, Lost in Time 1 and 2, which is, frankly, pretty good if you like Moon Logic. And then we've got stuff from Dynamics, Incredible Machine, Sid and Al's Incredible Tunes, was basically the cartoon version of the Incredible Machine, Aces of the Deep, and you'll notice they don't mention Space Quest 5 anywhere. They somehow thought Sierra Soccer was important enough to include, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. And then you've got the different collections, Space Quest Collection, Larry Collection, and Load Runner and Battle Bugs, which again, where's Space Quest 5? Nowhere, that's where. Anyway, and as you can see over here, it had UK phone lines and France phone lines. So this is a European. This is why I know this is a European box. I know we're from the American version. We've got Having Trouble Getting Started, which is another very nicely layouted, much more professional, I think, than whatever's in the European box. And this is basically just your getting started manual, something that really should have been inside the game manual, but I'm very glad they didn't include that, because look at this fucking centerfold. This is so beautiful it doesn't even fit into frame. But yeah, this is really cool. And anyway, that wraps it up for the 6 Space Quest game boxes. Now I'm going to do a separate video on the collection editions, the Space Quest collections. There are quite a few of those. Some of them are quite rare. Let's just lift the camera up here and show you just what an absolute clusterfuck this video turned out to be. This is... it's so bad it won't even keep it in focus. Yeah, this is what a video looks like after I'm done with it. There's the script on my kid's iPad over there, and there's the stuff I had to put on the chair. And this is the makeshift tripod that I filmed the whole thing on. And this thing was threatening to fall down every sec. So yeah, this is the level of professionalism you're getting here, kids, but at least I hoped that the actual boxes were interesting to watch in and of themselves. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm Space Quest Historian. Take care. Round the Chrono Stream. All that shit. Now I gotta clean all this fucking bullshit up. So, yeah. Good night. Good times.